Members of the Canadian Chinese community continue to get defamed. First, it was by an 11-year-old girl last month who falsely accused an Asian man of shredding her hijab. But these days, the Chinese community is being slandered by, you guessed it, the media party, which seems to be implying that many of the members of this community who immigrated to Canada are anti-immigration? If anything, the Canadian Chinese community is not going quietly into the night regarding hijab hoax. They want an apology from elected officials, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who was so quick to condemn the phantom Asian perpetrator of the hijab shredding that never happened. And they want the police to reopen the investigation to find out what really went down that day. And wow, folks, there really is so much to this fake hate crime story that simply does not add up. But it looks like the Chinese community will receive neither an apology nor a new investigation, despite protests that have brought out hundreds to both Queen's Park and Parliament Hill. And to add insult to injury, check out the coverage their protests have received from the mainstream media. Coverage that at best is biased and at worst is outright falsified. And even more inexplicably, coverage that paints these patriots as bigots and anti-immigration. For example, at the Toronto protests late last month that attracted some 500 protesters, the number affixed to that gathering was around 30, according to the Toronto Sun. And then CFRB morning man John Moore, commenting on the Sun's coverage, said he could barely see 10 protesters in the photograph.
Yeah, this was a piddling protest. They say 30. I can barely find 10 in a picture.
Does this look like around 30 people or barely 10, folks? Now, I'm going to give the Sun and CFRB the benefit of the doubt here. My hunch is that these reporters only made it to grade 6 math, kind of like Jethro Bodine from the Beverly Hillbillies. So, hey, 500 might look like about 30 if you drop a 0 and make the 5 a 3 and carry something. As for Mr. Moore, hey, when you only have 10 fingers, counting a large procession can make for a mammoth challenge. But if that coverage was sheer fakery, the coverage of last weekend's protest at Parliament Hill by Ottawa crime reporter Shamini Yogaretdem was downright shameful thanks to its inherent bias. Now you ask, why would a crime reporter be dispatched to cover a protest? Well, folks, read Shamini's story. It's a crime, all right. For example, Shamini seems to have more time and empathy for the Antifa thugs who staged a counter-protest that day. Despite booing "O Canada," despite chanting obscenities at police officers, Shamini quotes a man who identifies himself as Wan Wan, and he says this, quote, "There are some out-of-town conservative Chinese racists, and they are collaborating basically with some white nationalist groups here in Canada. As a Chinese Canadian, I'm pretty ashamed about that," end quote. Well, to paraphrase a line from The Lone Ranger, who was that masked maniac? Yet these patriots, seeking only an apology from the PM and an explanation from the police, are being painted as conservative Chinese racists? Yes, Chinese people who fled the tyranny of communism are being branded as racist by white left-wing losers who brandish the hammer and sickle on Parliament Hill. And these loons are the media darlings? Meanwhile, the Huffington Post apparently didn't have anyone on the Hill that day, but they ran a truly inexplicable piece of pre-protest coverage, nevertheless, by Vince Wong. Anyway, the headline for Wong's story is all you need to read. Quote, "The Chinese Canadian community can't fight racism with Islamophobia," end quote. Well, I'll be damned. Calling out a Muslim, perpetrating a hoax, and falsely smearing a member of another ethnic group is an example of Islamophobia? Like, really? That's how low the benchmark is now? You know, folks, Edelman Public Relations recently released its annual trust barometer, and get this, the least trusted institution in 22 out of 28 countries surveyed is, can you guess it? Yeah, the media. Oh, that must piss them off. And when you look at how the hijab hoax protests have been covered by the mainstream media, in which the offender is comforted and the victims are condemned, you truly get an idea why so many members of the public buy into what Sean Hannity proclaimed in 2016, namely, journalism is dead. For the Rebel.media, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies. Hey folks, download the new Rebel Media app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store to take the Rebel with you wherever you go.